I wanted to ask you about Wendell Berry, who had dedicated a book to you called Home Economics.
Yeah.
And a man that is, whose name is well known. Would you tell us how you knew him or how you came to know him?
Well, Wendell read the first edition of New Roots for Agriculture, and he wrote me a letter, complimented me on the book, pleaded with me, though, to consider keeping draft animals in. One of my last chapter, I talked about tractors run on alcohol fuel. Said keep them in as an option. I wrote back and said I'd be happy to keep them in as an option, and so on. And then he called, I think one Sunday evening, and said this is Wendell Berry, and he'd like to come out and do a story for New Farm magazine that was put out by Rodale.
Right.
And so I remember yet he was trying to negotiate the dates that were best for him and me, and he said, well, now we're going to be killing hogs. He and his neighbors would butcher together, and so at any rate we got a date worked out. He came, and he wrote the story, which became sort of the forward for was it forward or afterward of the second edition of New Roots for Agriculture. Well, we became friends, and we've collaborated a lot in writing, the telephone.
You and he edited together Meeting the Expectations of the Land. You had a third editor.
Yeah, Bruce Coleman. Bruce Coleman had been my editor, New Roots for Agriculture, when he worked for Friends of the Earth in the book section.
And did that book just grow out of you and Wendell getting together and finding things to write about in common? And
well, that book happened because a person in this area by the name of J. Harris wanted to do something about agriculture.
In this area, you mean in the Washington, D.C. area?
Well, yeah, Maryland, and I think he lived in Maryland or Pennsylvania. I think he had roots in both places. I think he lived in Maryland and been from Pennsylvania. And so I said, well, I think what we ought to do is answer that CAST report. There's a report put out by I forget what CAST stands for now.
I don't know.
But it was a group of people that were worried about, what does it stand for? Committee? Council on Agricultural Science and Technology. And these were a bunch of conventional agriculturists that were nervous that there were getting to be too many people talk about getting rid of chemicals. And it was really the agricultural establishment.
This is early 1980s we're talking about, right? Because you published the book in '84.
Right. They were wringing their hands, and so I thought, well, we ought to answer that report, and so what I did, we got a bunch of so Jay Harris gave us the money, and several of us assembled in Chicago, and we talked about putting a book together that would essentially answer that. Well, you don't control my friends that are interested in these problems and direct them rigorously, but what came out of it was this wonderful set of papers that spoke of the wholeness of agriculture rather than agribusiness, which is kind of an obscene word. And so Wendell and I and Bruce did the editing. It's sold pretty well, I think.
Yes, it certainly has.
And it's I'm proud of the work.